2 million years ago, Africa wasn't a land of safaris or luxury resorts. It was a shifting, unpredictable world, a mosaic of open savannas, sparse woodlands, winding rivers, swamps brimming with crocodiles, and craggy hills that held shelter and danger. Every morning, the landscape could change. A flood might carve a new riverbank. A wildfire sparked by dry lightning could consume an entire forest, turning a once-safe gathering spot into ash. A hominin like Homo habilis or Australopithecus afarensis would wake up on a bed of leaves or dry grass, tucked into a makeshift nest in the crook of a tree or beneath an overhang of volcanic rock. The air was filled with early morning sounds, the distant calls of baboons, the flapping of vulture wings, and the soft, eerie murmurs of wind over tall grasses. Above, the sky was vast, a deep, endless blue streaked with clouds, sometimes promising rain, sometimes only heat. Even the dust in the air carried a story. Tracks from the night before, dried blood from a recent kill, pollen from a tree blooming miles away. The earth was never silent. There were the roars of lions, the high yips of wild dogs, the distant drumming of elephants on the move. Movement always mattered. A rustle might be a lizard, or a leopard. Crocodiles waded in still waters, invisible until the splash. But it wasn't all threat. There were rewards too. Trees heavy with figs, termite mounds bursting with protein, shallow pools full of fish. And, occasionally, the rich prize of marrow inside a scavenged bone. Shells could be gathered by the shoreline. Roots could be dug from the dirt. Even the act of chewing, something we barely consider, was central to life. The dominant feeling? Constant vigilance. Every scent on the breeze was information. Every shadow might hold a lesson, or a trap. Yet in this uneasy rhythm was something deeper, the shaping of awareness, a mind primed to notice, to learn, to remember. Before we continue deeper into this ancient world, here's something curious. Over 99% of the people who watch these explorations never subscribe. If you're still with us, maybe this is your moment to change that. What was it like to experience the world through the senses of an early hominin? Their survival depended on interpreting the faintest clues. They didn't just react to the world, they absorbed it, intuitively, continually. The environment was not something separate from them. It was an extension of themselves. Taste wasn't about preference, it was survival. Bitter flavors often signaled poison. Sweetness promised quick energy. Sour might mean fermentation or spoilage. Every bite was a gamble and a calculation. Children learned the difference early, from both experience and mimicry. You didn't eat what others avoided. You learned from a wince. Smell was a daily lifeline, more refined than ours today. It allowed them to trace animals, detect distant fires, even sense rainfall in the air. A single whiff could mean safety or catastrophe. Imagine a young hominin inhaling deeply to find where the herd went, or sniffing a berry with inherited suspicion. Scent guided everything, from recognizing kin to avoiding disease. Hearing, too, was crucial. From bird alarms overhead to the quiet crunch of something moving through grass, their ears were tuned to the world's murmurs. Silence was meaningful. When the birds stopped calling, it often meant danger, but it could also mean awe, a moment of discovery. The soft sound of a stream, the buzz of bees near a hive. And thought was beginning to change. Their brains were evolving. A Homo erectus may have stood still, looking at a rock and imagining more than its weight. Perhaps they saw a tool before it existed. Maybe they pictured a way to extract honey from a beehive or to cross a stream using a fallen tree. Problem-solving wasn't just spontaneous, it was passed on. That ability to imagine outcomes, plan, and remember past mistakes marked a revolution. The earliest tools weren't just practical. They were monuments to thought. A sharpened stone was a step into the future, not just an object, but a symbol. And once one mind could picture something abstract, it changed what was possible for the group. Knowledge was now shareable. Culture, in its earliest spark, was born. At some uncertain point, a moment so ancient we may never find it, a hominin kept fire alive. Maybe it was born from a lightning strike, maybe from volcanic activity, but someone, or many, learned to carry it, feed it, protect it. That moment transformed not just the night but the species. Fire brought heat, light, protection. But more importantly, it brought time. For the first time, night wasn't the end of activity. It became something new, a space to sit, think, share. Fire extended consciousness past daylight. It gave rise to rituals, to comfort, to dreams. Picture it. The fire crackling, small shadows dancing on stone. Figures gathered close, silent or murmuring in a tongue long lost. Beyond the glow, blackness. Predators. Unknown eyes. But within the circle, safety, warmth. Small children drifted to sleep near the embers. Elders whispered memories. And maybe, just maybe, laughter echoed across the dark. These were the first theaters. Here, ideas sparked and passed between generations. Maybe gestures turned into rituals. Maybe warnings became stories. The fire was more than a tool. It was a catalyst for memory, a container for emotion, a bridge across time. Somewhere in that flickering light, imagination bloomed. The past became narrative. The future became plan. Around fire, they became more than animals. They became ancestors. The world of early humans was not a fixed stage. It changed constantly, and hominins moved with it. Climate shifts dried lakes, expanded deserts, or cooled entire continents. And so, some left the only world they had known. Out of Africa, their feet crossed landscapes we can barely recognize today. Through river valleys, along coastal edges, across tundras and forests, they moved, slowly but persistently. Migration was not a choice. It was instinct, curiosity, survival. Some followed prey, others followed promise. All carried stories. Over generations, they adapted to brutal cold, punishing droughts, unfamiliar prey. In Europe, Neanderthals faced icy winds and hunted massive game. In Southeast Asia, early humans navigated dense jungles and island chains. Each group developed new tools, new tactics, new behaviors. They became sculptors of possibility. Some hunted with long spears tipped with stone. Others learned to fish with sharpened bone. In colder regions, they scraped hides and sewed with sinew. Shelter grew more complex, not just for protection, but for social life. They began to settle, just a little, in caves, under rock shelters, beside rivers that fed them for years. In time, Homo neanderthalensis developed sophisticated culture. They wore ornaments, buried their dead with care, shaped tools with remarkable precision. We once dismissed them as brutes. We now know better. They painted, they mourned, they remembered. Words were not yet spoken as we speak them, but something deep and rich pulsed through their interactions. Grunts gave way to tone, to gesture, to rhythm. A point of a finger, a change in pitch, a glance, meaning layered upon meaning. Early hominins may have had hundreds of signals. A gesture might mean, danger here, or come now, or this is mine. Emotion sharpened them. Anger, joy, fear, all left physical marks in how they stood, how they touched, how they moved together. Bonds were not accidental. They were cultivated. But even beyond communication, there was something else. Care. We see it in burials, in signs of injured individuals who lived long after their wounds, because someone helped them heal. In tools made not just for utility, but perhaps for identity. In gatherings that weren't just for food, but for belonging. And in symbols, handprints in caves, lines carved in rock, pigments on bone. These were not random. These were memory. These were claims. I was here. I mattered. Symbols became stories. Stories became culture. And culture became continuity. Roughly 300,000 years ago, a new kind of human emerged, Homo sapiens. With them came art, complex language, trade, navigation, and the last great wave of global migration. But they were not alone. For tens of thousands of years, we shared the planet, and sometimes families, with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others still unknown. We carry their genes. Their stories live on in our blood, in our instincts, in our dreams. So what did their world look like? It looked like survival. It looked like change. It looked like the first sparks of everything we now take for granted. Curiosity, compassion, imagination. The sky they stared into is the same sky we watch today. The stars above them are the same ones that guide us still. Their world was fragile, vast, and profoundly alive. And it still lives, beneath our skin, behind our eyes, and in the questions we still ask. Because their world wasn't lost. It became the foundation for everything we are becoming.